वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतां स्वकतः कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः। हृदयन्तस्थो हि अभद्राणि विधुनोति श्रुतिसताम्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवयां भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकीः। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, a summary of chapter 22. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाशतवेषधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. I like to seek blessings from all the assembled Vaishnavas and thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. Please forgive me for my any shortcomings. I'll be just summarizing. Before I start, I just like to give a very brief prelude to this chapter. This chapter talks about the conversation between sage Maitreya talking to Vidura, narrating the pastime of King Prithu and Kumara's meet. And the conversation taking place between them is constituted of 63 verses. This chapter of Bhagavad Purana narrates the visit of the 4 Kumaras to the court of King Prithu and as an Shakta avatar of Vishnu. The king worships the sages and asks them about the way of emancipation that can be followed by all people who are caught in the web of worldly things. Sanat Kumara tells the king that Vishnu is the refuge to all and grants liberation of the cycle of births and rebirths. His worship frees one from material desires and lust. One should be freed from material objects, live a simple life of non-violence and devotion of Vishnu, and follow the teachings of a good guru and undergo self-realization. One should realize that all living things are forms of God. Without devotion and knowledge, humans are incomplete. Out of 4 Purusharthas, only moksha is eternal, while religious duty, wealth and pleasure decay with this life. While all beings are subject to destruction, the soul and the God in our bodies are eternal. So it is paramount that one surrenders to God as Vishnu or Krishna. I'll briefly go the essence of all the text. Please bear with me since this being a very big chapter, 63 verses. If I take a little bit of extra time. I tried my best to concise. So the text 1 and 2 talks about the citizens when they were just praying to the king Prithu, the 4 Kumaras who were looking as bright as sun and who are Siddheshwaras, that means who have achieved all the yogic perfection, arrived on the spot. Kumaras usually visits those places where the places are sinless. So this means that during the reign of Maharaj Prithu, everything on this surface of this globe was sinless, and that's how Kumaras decided to see the king. So text 3, 4 and 5 talks of how Prithu Maharaj received 4 Kumaras and set an example of one should receive a spiritually advanced personality as per Shastras. The king took the water and washed the lotus feet of the Kumaras and sprinkled it over his hair. So even we should make a practice of this. Whomever pure Vaishnavas we happen to encounter, we should wash their feet and sprinkle the water on our hairs. Text 6 talks about Kumaras in relation to Lord Shiva, mentioning they were elderly to Shiva because of their refusal to marry. Lord Brahma became so angry that his eyes became reddish, and between his eyes, Lord Shiva or Rudra appeared. Text 7 and 8 explains how one is benefited when any person upon whom the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are pleased and can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world as well as after death. So Prithu Maharaj also wonders that what kind of pious activity he might have performed so that the Kumaras graced him by appearing before him without any difficulty. So any person with whom the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are pleased, one can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world. But also, not only that, they receive the favor of the auspiciousness of Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu. Text 9, it is said that Muyanti yat Suryaha. So great demigods like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Chandra are also sometimes bewildered trying to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Krishna was present on this planet, Lord Brahma and King Indra also mistook him. So, in the same way, great personalities and Vaishnavas, like the four Kumaras, are also invisible to ordinary persons, although they are traveling all over the universe in different planetary systems. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart, and with pure devotees, the Vaishnavas are also traveling all over the world. But those who are under the modes of material nature cannot understand the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they don't understand the source of this cosmic manifestation or the Vaishnavas. Therefore, one cannot see the Supreme Personality of Godhead or a Vaishnava with these material eyes, and one has to purify their senses and engage in the service of the Lord. Text 10 and 11 concludes that if a saintly person goes to the house of even an unimportant man, such a person becomes glorious by his blessings. So it is therefore in the Vedic system said that the householder invite a saintly person to his home and receive his blessings. Any house who does not receive a Vaishnava in the manner explained in the Shastras is to be considered the residential quarters of venomous serpent, which is more dangerous than a snake, because the snake can be subdued by charming mantras or any herbs, but not an envious person be pacified by any means. Text 12 briefs about Maharaj Prithu expressing his great appreciation of Vaishnavism by addressing the Kumaras as Vaishnava Shreshtaha. In other words, everyone should offer respect to a Vaishnava without considering his source of birth. No one should consider a Vaishnava in terms of birth. The Vaishnava is always the best of Brahmanas, and as such, one should offer all respects to a Vaishnava, not only as a Brahmana, but as the best of the Brahmanas. Text 13 is a question asked by Prithu Maharaj for his own sake. Since he was in a position of a grihastha and in charge of an royal authority, Maharaj Prithu inquired from the four Kumaras about the fallen conditioned souls who were rotting in this material world due to their past bad or inauspicious activities. He was trying to find out is there any possibility for their auspiciousness, spiritual life. So one becomes fallen by dint of his own past bad activities. Everyone is responsible for his fallen condition because of his own activities. Text 14 and 15. By material association, we lose our spiritual consciousness. Consequently, there is a question of the auspiciousness and inauspiciousness. But those who are Atmarama or self-realized and have transcended such questions, the conclusion is that for those who are always engaged in the devotional service of the personality of Godhead, the duality of the auspiciousness and inauspiciousness does not arise. So Prithu Maharaj is therefore asking about auspiciousness not for the sake of Kumaras but for his own sake. Text 16. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always trying to give the individual soul the intelligence to understand about himself. He is always with the individual as a friend sitting by the side of a friend, and he facilitates to all living entities according to their desires. Therefore, he is called Atma Bhavanaha. Text 17, 18, 19, and 20 talks about Sanat Kumara was was pleased by the questions asked by Prithu Maharaj, and even though Prithu Maharaj knew everything, but he presented himself before the Kumaras as if he did not know anything. The Kumaras admitted that not only the king benefited by such a meeting, but the Kumaras were as well. The speaker and the audience are both benefited. So Sanat Kumara continued saying that as Prithu Maharaj was already a self-realized soul, therefore he had a natural inclination to glorify the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Kumaras assured him that there was no chance of his falling victim to the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. So, in other words, the process of hearing and chanting about the glories of the Lord is the only means to clarify the heart of material contamination. Text 21, 22, 23 talks about the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society, which is the detachment from the bodily concept of life and increased and steadfast attachment for the Supreme Lord. In order to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master and learn from him the methods of devotional service and hear from him about the transcendental message and glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this way, one has to increase his conviction about devotional service. Then it will be very easy to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot live outside the society of devotees. One must live in the association of devotees, where there is constant chanting and hearing of the glories of the Lord. Text 24 and 25 talks about qualifications required for spiritual advancement, and some of them listed are to be a non-violent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulative principles without material desire, and while following the regulative principles should not blaspheme others. A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of the opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate. Plain living and high thinking are recommended for a devotee. They have to become tolerant. Dvandva titikchaya. This is the world of duality. Lord Sri Krishna therefore advises in Bhagavad Gita, Ramastikishava Bharata. My dear Arjuna, please try to tolerate all these disturbances. We can increase our propensity for devotional service by hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from realized souls. The more we hear from realized souls, the more we make advancement in our devotional life. The more we advance in devotional life, the more we become detached from the material world. The more we become detached from the material world, as advised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the more we increase in the attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 26-27 talks about how the soul is entrapped and how it can be liberated. It is stated, Hridayi ayam atmaha. The soul and the super soul both live within the heart. Panchatmaka, either they are covered by the five elements or the five coverings of material contamination. They all are burnt into ashes by the blazing fire of knowledge and detachment, and one is fixed firmly in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one takes a shelter of a bona fide master and advances one's attraction for Krishna by the spiritual master's instructions, the five coverings of the living entity cannot be uncovered from the material heart. All material desires are present as long as one is in the bodily concept of life. As long as one is covered by material desires, he thinks himself the master or the enjoyer. The liberated person has no attachment for anything, material or for sense gratification. He understands that everything is connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that everything should be engaged in the service of the Lord. He sees Krishna in everything and everything in Krishna. So this is oneness. Text 28 and 29 briefs about the spirit soul is one and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is manifested in Swamcha and Vibhinancha's expansions. In this way, for different reasons, there are different expansions of the same one principle, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding is real knowledge. When living entity is covered by the upadhi or designated body, he sees differences. Exactly as one sees differences in reflection of oneself on water and oil or in a mirror, the Supreme Personality of Godhead similarly exhibits different in different expansions. Text 30. In this verse, it is very nicely explained how our original Krishna consciousness become polluted and we gradually become almost completely forgetful of our relationship with the Supreme Lord. When the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously, it becomes the cause of our material bondage. Text 31 and 32 talks about the living entity or the soul is ever existing and eternal. It is lost when actual knowledge is not working. Here, lost means one loses his real remembrance of his position as a part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as a man who sleeps forgets himself. Stronger obstructions to one's self interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self realization. In the human form of life, one should come to the position of jnana and vijnana, but despite this great opportunity, if one does not develop knowledge and practical application of knowledge through the help of a spiritual master and the Shastras, if we do not properly execute our mission of life in self realizations, nature's punishment will render us inactive by putting us in the form of trees and hills. Text 34, 35, 36, 37, 38 talks about those who have strongly desires to cross the ocean of nescience must not associate with the modes of ignorance. Out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent laws of nature, death. We should not be satisfied simply by a promotion to the higher planetary systems. We should try to get out of the material cosmic manifestation, go to the spiritual world, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is our highest achievement. Thus, Lord Sanatkumara advised the king to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is living within everyone's heart, along with the individual soul, in each and every body, either moving or not moving. Text 39, 40, 41. Since Sanat Kumara, who was son of Lord Brahma, was fully Krishna conscious, he could point out the path of spiritual advancement. The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non devotees, the jnanis, and the yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Although the ocean is difficult to cross, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all dangers. Text 42, 43, 44, 45 grieves of Prithu Maharaj, remembering the causeless mercy of the Lord, and thus welcomed the arrivals of the Kumaras, who were fulfilling the Lord's prediction. In other words, when the Lord makes a prediction, he fulfills that prediction through some of his devotees. When Lord Vishnu appeared in the great arena of sacrifice, at the time when King Prithu was performing a great sacrifice, Ashwamedha, he predicted that the Kumaras would very soon come and advise the king. Thus, everything belonging to Prithu Maharaj offered to the Kumaras as his duty. His life, his wife, children, home, furniture, and household paraphernalia, his kingdom, strength, land, and especially the all treasuries were offered unto the Kumaras. Text 46 talks about everyone should follow the instructions of the Brahmanas, for their only business is to spread Shabda Brahma or Vedic knowledge all over the world. This verse indicates that the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras eat only by the virtue of the Brahmanas' mercy. In other words, they should not eat anything which is forbidden by the Brahmanas. The Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras should eat only Krishna Prasada, which is offered them by the mercy of the Brahmanas. Text 47 and 48. The king saw that there was no other way to satisfy Kumaras for their exalted activities Knowledge of Krishna is such a great gift that it is impossible to repay the benefactor. The best friend and benefactor of all people is one who awakens humanity to its original Krishna consciousness. The Kumaras were greatly satisfied by King Prutu's method of worship. The Kumaras were greatly satisfied and praised the characteristics of Maharaj Prutu and his great devotional attitude and humility. Text 49, 50, 51 briefs out the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do with the desires, as he is fully satisfied with himself. Similarly, a devotee who has no desire other than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as self satisfied as Supreme Lord. Being self satisfied, Maharaj Prutu executed his duties as perfectly as possible according to the time and his situations, strength, and financial positions. His only aim in all his activities was to satisfy the absolute truth. In this way, he duly acted. The life and dedication of Maharaj Prutu in the transcendental loving service of Supreme Personality of Godhead serve as a good example of Karma Yoga. A soul dedicated to the service of the Lord should never think of himself as the personal proprietor or the superintendent. Text 52 and 53. In this verse, Maharaj Prutu is linked to the sun, Arkavat. Sometimes he is since because the sun shines on stool or urine or so many other polluted things, but since the sun is all powerful, it is never affected by the polluted things. On the contrary, the sun sterilizes and purifies polluted and dirty places. Similarly, a devotee may engage in so many material activities, but because he has no desire for sense gratification, they may never affect him. On the contrary, he dovetails all material activities for the service of the Lord. Text 54, 55, 56, 57, up to 63 to the end, it describes about the strengths and qualities and are compared to other demigods and personalities of Prithu Maharaj. After begetting his 5 sons, Prithu Maharaj continued to rule the planet. Maharaj Prithu used to rule this planet as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, Maharaj Prithu is compared to the kings of the moon and sun. The king of the moon and the king of the sun serve as an example of how the Lord desires the universe to be ruled. Maharaj Prithu maintained all the standards of good government, and he was so invisible that no one should disobey his orders any more than a person could stop heat and light emanating from a fire. He was so strong and powerful that he was compared to the king of heaven, Indra, and satisfied everyone. Maharaj Prithu's intelligence and education were exactly like that of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death. His opulences was comparable to the Himalaya mountains, where all valuable jewels and metals are stored. He possessed great riches like Kuvera, the treasure of the heavenly planets, and no one could reveal his secrets, for they were like the demigod Varunas. In his bodily strength and in the strength of his senses, Maharaj Prithu was as strong as the wind, which can go anywhere and everywhere. As far as intolerance was concerned, he was just like all the powerful Rudras, Lord Shiva or Sadashiva. His bodily beauty, he was just like Cupid, and his thoughtfulness, he was like a lion. In his affection, he was just like Swayambhu Manu, and in his ability to control, he was like Lord Brahma. Also, like all Vaishnavas, Maharaj Prithu was devoted to cow protection, spiritual masters, and qualified brahmanas. Prithu Maharaj also was very humble, meek, and gentle, and whenever he performed any philanthropic work or welfare activity for the general people, he would labor exactly as if he were tending to his own personal necessities. So, in other words, all of his philanthropic activities were not for the sake of show, but were performed out of personal feeling and commitment. Throughout the whole universe, in the higher, lower, and middle planetary systems, Prithu Maharaj's reputation was loudly declared, and all ladies and saintly persons heard his glories, which were as sweet as the glories of Lord Ramachandra. Thank you very much.